and welcome to the Sewing Studio. I'm Anna and I'm delighted to bring you the Flower Collection by Lewis and Irene in collaboration with Delphine Brooks. Now, if you don't know already, Delphine Brooks is a well-known textile artist based up in Yorkshire, and she's designed these beautiful flower pictures. We've got daisies, a rose, sunflower, pansies, poppies and forget-me-nots. And we also have on each panel all the fabrics that you need to applique on to make these gorgeous pictures. Now, each panel comes with full instructions and even a little picture for how you could put it together and which fabrics to put where. But I'm going to take you through the steps and how I make them and bring Delphine's work to life and hopefully have some fun along the way. I've got a few tools that I like to use when doing applique. You don't need to have these tools to make these panels, but these are my personal items from home that I like to use to make the job easier. I also find that there's so many tools and gadgets and things on the market that we as sewers see, and actually sometimes you wonder, is it worth the money? Should I invest? Is it going to make a difference? So it's also quite nice for you to see some different bits and bobs, and then you can make up your own mind. So I've got a fusing mat, a light box, a marker pen, an applique foot and some trusty scissors. I'm also going to be using a double-sided adhesive. Now we've got heat and bond or Bondaweb. I've used both and have pros and cons for both as well. So the Bondaweb I find is easier to draw on. However, the backing is a bit trickier to take off. So if you're doing something quite small, I was doing some leaves the other day, well, it was quite a while ago actually, but doing some leaves and trying to kind of peel the back off, I ended up fraying the edge in. You don't tend to get that with the heat and bond, but it is slightly embossed. So the drawing it's not difficult, it's just not so precise, but good enough for what we're doing. I've got the forget-me-not panel here, and the first thing that I've done is cut all of the fabrics off so that we can use them to make the applique pieces. So what we're going to do is trace around these on some heat and bond. So I'm going to switch my light box on. Again, you don't have to use this, you can use a glass table with a light underneath, you can go up to a window, anything that's kind of got light behind it that you can see. So I'm just going to pop that on there and then get my piece of Bondaweb, and then I like to use every piece, so I'm just going to go on the corner, and you can see how with the light underneath you can see through the piece that you want to trace. Now I'm going to do this petal here, and I also, because that petal is over the top there, I like to go a little bit bigger and kind of make up my own shape around there, so when I layer it up there's no gaps in there. I'm just going to start on the line and then make up my own mind of what I do on that bit. So that's that one, and then this one uses the same fabric. So I'm just going to trace around there, oops. Then decide for myself from there, like that. Now, when I said it uses the same fabric, as I mentioned just now, it does give you an idea of which fabrics to use that come with the panel, but you know, it's your panel, so you can do it however which way you like. Okay, so let's switch that off. We're done with the light box. Next thing I'm going to do is just roughly cut out these two shapes. One. And two, so I can get rid of that. Now this is the piece of fabric that I have, and you want to make sure when you're doing this that you are sticking your double-sided adhesive to the back, so the wrong side of the fabric, because otherwise when you turn it around your shape is going to be the opposite way to what you actually wanted to achieve. So we go over to the iron, just pop that down, lay these on, and then just press them in place. So with this heat and bond, like I say, it's got a slightly embossed side, and that is the sticky side. And just hold it there for a few seconds. You don't need to kind of wiggle an iron. I'm using a small iron, which I tend to like to do with applique because mostly we're using small pieces and literally it just stops getting your fingers burnt. So they're now stuck on there. So I'm going to peel the backing off. That comes off really easy. And then I'm going to cut these out a bit neater because this is my final shape. Now, a top tip from me when you're doing something like this, I like to cover up the lines. You don't have to, but I like to cover up the lines. So when I've drawn these, I've drawn exactly on the line. So then when I cut them out, I just go slightly outside of the line so that I then know when I pop them down on the panel, it will hide the black lines, hopefully. So I'm just cutting those out. And it might seem strange, but I love this bit. I do a lot of applique and I just find it a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, I suppose. You're making all the pieces and you're deciding what's going to go where and colours. Just kind of taps into that creative side. So, nearly there. There we go. Okay, so then we have our two petals and you'll see that they then fit with a bit of overlap over the two that we've traced. So the next stage, I've already cut the other pieces. So the next stage we're going to do is actually make the flower before we stick it onto this. Now this is where the fusible mat comes into play. And this is really, really useful. I've not actually had this very long. I've been umming and ahhing for a while and I thought, I've got to do these panels. I'll see if it is actually a game changer. And actually, I quite liked it, so then had to buy one, as you do. So what this does is what I find now is when you're laying out your pieces and putting everything where it needs to be, it shifts and it moves and, you know, you can get a bit frustrated. Now this mat is slightly tacky so that it keeps everything into position. So let me just move it over here a minute so I can show you. So what you want to do is pop your panel down and then pop this over the top so you can see your design underneath. And then because this is slightly tacky, as you're laying your pieces on where they need to be, they stay where they are. It's really such a good idea. Now, what I'm particularly bad at is remembering which piece goes where. So bear with me while I put this together. That one, and then I've already I've stuck together the middle pieces at the centre of the flower. So then I'm just going to pop that on. And then what you do is you press that all together, so you're making a flower. So you have this sheet, which you just pop over the top, and then get your iron, and again, just hold it on there for a few seconds each time to stick all the elements of the flower together. Now I've got the iron on just a medium heat, that's more than enough. Just make sure that you're holding it there. And obviously don't sort of zigzag because you can move these out of position. So I like to go one way and then back the other way, just to be sure. Take that one off. I just give it a couple of seconds to cool down a little bit. And then what you do is just gently peel it off from the mat. See, I can see I'm not quite stuck in the middle there. Hang on then. Pop that back on and then just put a bit more heat on there. That should do it. That one doesn't want to stick. Hang on. Last time. But this is literally the process that you'll go through. Okay. So I would normally leave it to cool down a bit longer, but just want to show you the finished flower. There we go. And there we have a finished flower. So you would go through then around all of the pieces that are on the panel and go through and make them all like that first. And then what I'm going to do next is stick all the flowers directly onto the panel to then take it to the machine and sew a blanket stitch around them. So I've got all my flowers and leaves cut out and stuck together already. Now don't get me wrong, you don't have to stick them at that stage. You can do it all in the end. I just find it easier when working with a larger piece to have some elements together when piecing it together, so they don't all move and shift. So as you can see on the panel, the flowers are in layers. So the leaves are kind of in the background and then some of the flowers are as well. So I like to start with those first. So let's work on the leaves down the bottom here. So we've got those on there and I'm just lining it up to cover as much of the black line as I can. However, we are going to stitch over that so you won't see it. That's that one. Is that one? Like I say, the art form sometimes is remembering which piece goes where. And again, as you can see, I've cut these slightly longer so that when I put that flower on, there's no gap there at all. That's that one. So I'm just going to press these on. And again, you don't have to use this double-sided adhesive. You can just pin them on, you know, whatever you're comfortable with. You could even just use like a sew line glue stick, if you like, just to temporarily sort of, it's a bit like a Pritt stick type thing for fabric, to just temporarily keep something in place whilst you're sewing it. Just helps to stop everything moving. I prefer to do it this way. I enjoy the process more so than I enjoy pinning. Especially on small pieces, you kind of get a bit of a ridge and then it can bubble on there. So let's move up to the top and do these leaves. That's that one. That one. Doesn't matter if you go slightly over the edge, because when you do your final product, those will be sewn in anyway. So as I've got the iron, I'm going to do these flowers that are in the background slightly. So I just position that one. And that one. Stick all those down. Okay, so then I move on to the next layer. So you can see on this flower, it goes on top of that one, but actually it's under this one, and everything else is under that. So that will probably be the last one that I do. But then this one is under that one. So I'm going to, that's not that one, that's that one. Hang on, so that's this one. So I pop this one down first. I might just stick that bit. Today, and then I'm going to go for this one, because that leaf of this one goes over the top. And then that one sits over those. You get the idea. And then this one is underneath that one. Now this one I already attached the leaves to that as one whole piece. I was going to do it that way on all of them, but then changed my mind because we're allowed. And then lastly, the one that we've just finished, that's that way up. Was it? Or was it that way up? This is the bit that I'm really terrible at, as you can tell. There we go. Wonderful. So that's all the pieces stuck on. So now we'll head over to the machine and sew them down. Now I mentioned earlier about an applique foot. Again, you don't need this to do applique. I like using it because it slots in the back there and then therefore raises slightly on the back, so it deals with the different levels of the fabric. And also it's got really good markings on here that line up with the needle when you're using your blanket stitch. So therefore you tend to kind of watch the markings on the foot and can be a bit more accurate. So just snap that on. So I'm going to use a blanket stitch with the needle in the middle position so that I can follow this line here on the foot. And if you've got a machine that has different blanket stitches and you see an M and an R next to them, that's what that means, that the needle is either going to start in the middle position or the right position. And that just helps you to line up where you're going to go with your stitches. So let's pop this in. And I tend to just lower the needle with the hand wheel to get that first stitch into where I need it to be. So I'm going to drop the foot pedal, drop the presser foot even. I've got my foot on the foot pedal. And then I'm just at medium speed. I tend to go quite slow, especially when I'm doing circles, because I like to be quite accurate. Just going to move that around slightly. I'm constantly watching the needle for where it's finishing before I raise my foot and do my turns. Obviously, you know, if you're experienced with a knee lift or want to have a go, that's really useful for this. Sadly, I don't have good enough coordination. applique. So that's the effect that you get when using a blanket stitch to finish these off. Now, not every machine comes with blanket stitch options, in which case you can use your zigzag and alter the length of it to get it really close around the edge. I'll show you what that looks like now. And this time I've chosen a stitch in the right position just so that you can see the difference. So again, I'm just going to drop my needle in so I'm on the edge of the petal, drop the presser foot. And this time, because I'm on the right, I'm following this mark on the foot. Just move that around. Stop it there. Just going to do a lock-in stitch to secure that in place. Cut my thread. In case you're wondering, by the way, I'm using a Janome 9480. It's a great machine. Lots of automatic features and things, makes the process a lot easier. And then that's what it looks like when you use a satin stitch. So either or, it's really your preference. And that's all there is to it. You would just carry on now sewing around each element that's on there. And now I see it, I actually quite like using the different stitches within one pattern. I like to match in my thread, but you could use a contrasting thread. You can use the same thread throughout. It's your piece of artwork and it's entirely up to you how you want to create it. Now, when you're finished making them, you could have all 6 and make a really large quilt, or you could just stick to one and make a cushion. Here's one I made earlier. This one is the poppies, and instead of doing the blanket stitch on this one, I've actually popped it on and then I've done some free motion around there, which is what I personally like to do occasionally. And then I've just very simply quilted it and done some echo quilting in there to make a cushion. I've used the excess bits that I had left over to make the piping, and I've just got some Lewis and Irene bumbleberries on the back. Really nice, simple thing to make. So I hope you've had fun going through these panels with me, and please do share with us anything that you might make. The things that I've used in the tutorial are linked below, so take a look and head over to our website. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.